right, guys, I'd like to call this meeting of February 10th to order. First order of business is roll call.
Mr. Ballard?
Here.
Ms. Cesario? Here. Ms. Johnson?
Yes.
Mr. Sturgill?
Here.
Mr. Williams?
Here.
Pledge, please. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Have a recognition of visitors. Seeing none. The first hearing of the public, please.
Brian Corey, Athletic Director for Lorain City Schools. The reason why I'm here today is I've seen a few board meetings where some things were brought up, questions were asked relative to baseball and softball fields. I've also had some individuals approach me over the course of the last couple of months asking me questions. I thought it would be a good idea to come here, sort of be able to dispel any rumors and be able to kind of fill you in on historically what's unfolded over the course of the last 7, 8, 9 years. As everybody's aware, at one point in time, we had 2 baseball and 2 softball fields at both Admiral King and Southview. Those fields were built in conjunction with our booster clubs, where, to be totally honest with you, they were beautiful fields. Our varsity fields, softball and baseball, at each of the 2 sites were really, really nice fields. Mr. Pickering can attest to that. He was coaching at that time. But very, very nice fields. Obviously, we all know the decision was made to consolidate. When that decision was made, we lost our fields. We didn't really have much of a choice. The way that the whole building project worked, they did not pay for the construction of a baseball and a softball field. So there were conversations that were going on at that time about what we wanted to do as a long-term permanent plan when it comes to those fields. In the interim, we decided to use the fields at Campana Park. The way that worked for that period of time was the pipe yard was actually being run by RS Entertainment, and Campana Park, the rest of Campana Park was being run by Lorain Youth Baseball. So what Lorain City Schools did was we literally rented from them for each of our home games, to be able to play our home games. Well, obviously, as things unfolded, when it came to the construction of this new building and it opened up, it freed up some additional land because the Charleston site became vacant when that facility moved over to become a part of the high school. The conversations continued. There were a lot of different things that were thrown out there. I think at the time it was more exploratory in an effort to try to gather as much information as possible, figure out as many different scenarios in trying to determine what the permanent home would be, so to speak, for baseball and softball. Over the course of the last 2.5 years, it kind of stopped. We didn't really have any more conversations. I tried on numerous occasions to start those conversations over again because obviously I get a lot of questions from people, parents, community members, what's going to happen, and every year it seems to be fingers crossed, let's hope it works out. This year we are using the fields again at Campana Park. We were lucky, in all honesty, less than a year ago, we were prepared to play all of our games away. We were not going to have any home games. And the primary reason was, and Mr. Glorioso sitting here, he knows the condition of some of those fields over there. got to the point where I had concerns relative to safety. And obviously, when you have concerns relative to safety, you have to worry about the safety of the kids first and foremost. I was very lucky to work some things out with the city, where the city did this past fall put some labor into the areas that I felt were of most concern, to be able to at least get one varsity softball, one varsity baseball, playable and in good enough condition to be able to play our home games there. I feel that those safety concerns are no longer a concern. Are the fields in great condition? No. Will they be playable to where we can play games there? Yes. Our booster club then spent over $30,000 on the two JV, what would be considered JV/freshman fields behind our stadium here. So now we have a place to practice and play our freshman and JV games. Believe it or not, over the last 5-6 years, all of our practices were in a gym. We didn't practice outdoors very, very rarely. Did we have that opportunity? So at least now we're able to have our practices in those fields. I've seen countless facilities throughout the state of Ohio, and I will say those fields behind the stadium, when it comes to freshmen and JV, will be no different than the average JV/freshman field. But that still leads us to what the long-term plan is for a varsity softball and baseball field. I don't have the answer. I have a number of different scenarios and conversations that can be had to try to come to what would be in the best interest of everybody involved, whether it be financially, for our kids. I think that's all things that we should explore, but what my goal is to try to at least put together a plan moving forward so we know where we stand long term.
Thank you. So you see, you're not ready to talk about the best case scenario yet, but you would think.
Well, I can tell you, okay, if you want Brian Corey's best case scenario, what I've learned over the years is Brian Corey's best case scenario isn't always necessarily the best case scenario. But the best case scenario would be to have a varsity baseball and a varsity softball field right here, on our site, on our facility. The reason why I say that is because for our kids to have access in not only during the season, but in the off season, to be able to walk out of the building after school, walk right across the parking lot here, and be able to have open fields and do a lot of the things that other school districts do 2-3 days a week. Right now, believe it or not, and I know it's cold outside, okay? There's a lot of schools throughout Northeast Ohio that are doing a lot outside right now when it comes to baseball and softball. Whether they can get onto that dirt, okay, they can still do work in the outfield. There's still things that they can do outdoors. The second that this weather breaks, they're going to be practicing. As soon as the season's over with, they go right into summer league. And we play a number of summer league games. It would be nice, again, for our kids to be able to utilize the locker room here, go outside. The nice thing about having it adjacent to your high school is if, God forbid, really bad weather were to come in, you can move those kids right from the field, right across the parking lot, into the building. Obviously, the further off site you are, the more that becomes a challenge. So for the kids, the coaches, and the program, the best case scenario would be that.
So when we built the new building, because we have all state-of-the-art buildings here now, was there a plan? And I guess this is probably a question for you, Jeff. Did we have a plan in place on what we're doing for baseball? Because all of our other sports teams are pretty much in line with where they should be. What we're going to do for baseball and softball?
Our plan for the future was, like Ryan did say, the fields were, the Charles administration building was, And then also right off of the, I'll call it the student parking lot and the entrance off of 24th Street. That corner of the property was going to be the girls' softball field. And again, the state does not pay, I want to reiterate what Brian said, the state does not pay for athletic or administrative projects.
I think one of the conversations that we've had, knowing that the state didn't or doesn't pay for those fields, I think some of the rules may have changed. I'm not sure. I think Lorain was partially funded on certain things. And again, it's not what we understand those rules are set by them, but we would hope that if we decided to build these fields, which we're going to have to do, that we would maybe be able to appeal to the state for some relief as it relates to that. I think we have, approximately what do we have in our LFI fund and the unspent ones?
Sure, Mr. Carney has that. We have approximately just a little bit over $1 million left in the project, but we have not closed the books on the project yet. And with me saying that, until we totally close the project out with the state, I would be a little leery going, because we still owe the state for the extended amount of gym space that we added to the project. We also added more classrooms. We made the high school a little bit bigger because we knew once we did build that high school that kids would, would return back. At least some of them would return back to Lorain.
Right, I understand it. I understand it. So you're saying this. So the high school we're in year 4 post,
Since 2016.
and we still have outstanding.
Yes, the state has not. We have paid a lot of the bills, but when we settle our 19% and their 81%, we have not yet totally completed the full stop.
Okay, so I'm asking, I mean, maybe why is that, or when is that supposed
It's
to
a
be?
long process. Actually, that process hasn't even started yet, and the state said it would take up to a year.
So what I'll do, we're going to be committed to our kids in baseball and softball. I didn't mean to cut you, Tim. I don't know if you finished your thought. Did you finish your thought? But so we don't have to deal with this here, we'll get a committee together to really see what we can go moving forward and figure out how to piece together, along with Mr. Ring, what fits best to get our baseball programs as good, if not better, than our communities that are around us. We'll make that a priority. At least have that discussion very soon.
And I thank you, and I know that the coaches and the kids would be extremely appreciative. And what I can say is they have our coaches, our kids, our parents. They've been great through this whole process. And there was that understanding in their minds also that at some point we would have our own facilities. And that's where I just want to be able to go back and tell them, here's where we're at, here's the long-term plan, whatever that may be, or whatever that may look like.
Thank you for that.
Thank you.
Yes, Ms. Williams.
And that was the other question that I think we still needed some clarity on the pros, the cons, the upsides, the downsides. At one time, also, we were looking at Campana Park. And there were some other amenities, adjacent properties and things like that. We understood a number of things. Maybe it was cost prohibitive. Perhaps it was more to maintain the facility. And then what do we do for all the other months that we're not in season? But we still haven't really fully understood that whole process. I mean, it could be something that's just not reasonable, but I thought there was discussion about the potential of all those fields, plus maybe soccer fields. There was some other conversations around that, which we should probably, even if we don't do it, we should have clarity on it and then assess that and look at these, which is the better scenario, and then dismiss whichever we're not going to do.
Okay.
If you want, I can speak to that a little bit. One thing I can say is, obviously, those are not our facilities. Let's just say hypothetically, we were to get those facilities. For those of you that have been to the pipe yard, forget about the field itself, everything that surrounds the field between the bleachers, the stadium, the restroom facility, okay, things of that nature. It's pretty robust. I mean, it's beyond what your average field would normally have in terms of that. If we were to get that, we would need to build something comparable per Title softball. If we did not, we could be in trouble. Now, go ahead.
I thought that was baseball and softball.
In terms of the pipe yard? Well, the pipe yard field, that individual stadium, okay?
Right, you're saying that we would have to build another pipe yard.
Basically, we would have to build a softball facility that would have comparable amenities. Now, we would have to figure out legally exactly what that encompasses because it would definitely have to be on a smaller scale, okay? But I've just learned through case law and other things, I don't think it would have to be to that extreme, but for example, having bleachers that are covered, the capacity wouldn't necessarily have to be the same necessarily, but bleachers that are covered, things of that nature, the handicap access, so on and so forth, those are things that are absolutes. Again, to what extent? I mean, those are things that we would have to figure out. I can't really speak to exactly what that would look like. What I do know also is if we were to take over the facility, for example, right now, George Daniel Stadium, we've been grandfathered in based on the capacity of that facility. We've been grandfathered in when it comes to the parking capacity, the number of restrooms, in other words, individual stalls, and so on and so forth, based on the capacity, a number of other things. But if it was transferred to us, we would then have to build a restroom facility because the capacity of the Pipe Yard Stadium is not something that's realistic for a high school. You know, we would never put that many people in that facility, but we would have to, again, do those things. Now, what the cost would be for all of those things, Mr. Hawks knows and understands that much better than I do. But I do know that we did, when Dr. Graham was here, we did have conversations. We went over to the facility and did a thorough evaluation with also some individuals that were independent. And we didn't get hard numbers, but we got a general idea, and the cost that was associated to also go along with the long-term maintenance of it was cost prohibitive.
For the sake of time, I would like to kind of draw this one in. So we'll put together a work group so we can really, really vet all of those questions in a smaller group and really see what's best to bring before the board and Mr. Ring on how we move forward. So for that, I thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Anyone else from the public? You can't hear me. I'm sorry about that. Anyone else? Any further from the public? Seeing none, I would like to have a motion to suspend the order for executive session. Going in for A2 and C.
First, I make a motion that we suspend the regular order of the board meeting.
Roll call?
Mr. Williams?
Yes.
Ms. Nazario? Yes. Mr. Ballard?
Yes.
Ms. Johnson? Yes. Mr. Sturgill?
Yes.
And I'd like a motion that we go into executive session for, was it AC?
A2 and C.
A2 and C.
Roll call?
Mr. Williams?
Yes.
Mr. Sturgill?
Yes.
Mr. Ballard?
Yes.
Ms. Nazario? Yes. Ms. Johnson?
Yes.
We will be coming out of our executive session as quickly as we possibly can. Thank you all.
Motion to come out of executive session at 6:34.
Roll call, please.
Mr. Williams?
Yes.
Ms. Nazario? Yes. Mr. Ballard?
Yes.
Ms. Johnson?
Yes.
Mr. Sturgill?
Yes. We're at number 6 now. Consider approval of the January 27th, 2020 regular meeting minutes.
Motion?
Support. Roll call, please.
Mr. Williams?
Yes.
Mr. Sturgill?
Yes.
Mr. Ballard?
Yes.
Ms. Nazario? Yes. Ms. Johnson?
Yes.
Old business. Anything in old business?
Through the chair, I don't know if it's old business or new business, but I guess it's old business since we have an interim treasurer. And I think we all received the correspondence from the firm that was helping us with the search, Mr. Pendleton, and had some recommendations for us based on conversations I believe you had with him regarding our treasurer search. And I think we've had these conversations also with Mr. Ring. and the commission is aware. So I would motion that based on not just that dialogue, but we've talked about in terms of how TIA has been performing, that we consider going forward with negotiations to suspend the search, or end the search, and enter negotiations with TIA to become the, not interim, but the permanent treasurer.
Is that in?
So that's a motion, yes.
Any discussion?
And I guess to provide clarity, the motion is to enter into negotiations with TIA, attorney, between the chair, the CEO, and some representative from the commission, however you guys choose to do that, Mr. Ring, to negotiate a contract for the treasury position.
And who supported that motion? Is there any further discussion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Williams?
Yes.
Mr. Sturgill?
Yes.
Mr. Ballard?
Yes.
Ms. Nazaria? Yes. Ms. Johnson?
Yes.
Motion's carried. So we also need to walk on the consulting contract with our previous. I need a motion. I think we've already discussed this, so we need a motion. Now we have final language from our legal team to accept.
And then we'll discuss it. Motion to recommend the contract for Mr. Hill.
Second.
Discussion, please.
Yes, if you could explain to everyone what that is, Mr. Ballard, please.
Okay, so we've got our 5-year forecast coming up very soon, and those are one of the things that we wanted to make sure as we were going through a transition of our treasurer, that we transitioned easily with the experience from our treasurer that's been there, being Mr. Josh Hill, and our interim treasurer, who this will be the first time of her preparing our 5-year forecast. So for that, we, I believe the date that we terminated this is June 30th? Through June 30th of this year, would be a $75 per hour fee plus a $200.
Yeah, I think when we initially went into this relationship, we anticipated being able to utilize Mr. Hill to offer some technical support where needed. I think most of this is done probably via phone call or whatever. So Mr. Hill was also at our meeting, I think 2 meetings ago,
Yes.
and has been very helpful. There's lots of stuff that we're trying to resolve from the previous administration, and I think he'll be very helpful in helping with some of those things also. So absolutely, this is a benefit to us, and it's at a cost that seems to be very reasonable.
Outstanding. Roll call, please.
Mr. Williams?
Yes?
Ms. Nazaria? Yes. Mr. Ballard?
Yes.
Ms. Johnson?
Yes.
Mr. Sturgill?
Yes. Next item is recommendations of the treasurer. Do you have anything?
Nothing at this time.
Thank you. And recommendations of our CEO. Mr. Ring?
Recently, I approved the following things. First of all, we would like to publicly thank a couple donations. We received $500 from Audio Visual Solutions for the students at Tony Morrison, and we also received a $500 donation from Kelly Hale in support of the robotics team at Longfellow Middle School. So we thank both of those folks for that. Moving forward in the personnel area, just a couple things I'd like to highlight. Mr. Karuski, who is here this evening, was approved as the Executive Director of Family Engagement and will be receiving a stipend for additional responsibilities through the end of this school year. And I'm also happy that we approved the Executive Director of Human Resources contract for Carol Gosling, who will be returning to the district, formerly an employee here, and have negotiated a contract with her through the end of July. So we're thankful to have both of those folks moving forward. A couple other things. We have approval of supplemental contracts for our track team, track girls and boys track teams. At my last meeting, in operational matters, we discussed some policies that were recommended to us from the Ohio School Boards Association. I shared those with the board 2 weeks ago, and I did move and approve those policies moving forward here. We also have expenditures for B&C Martial Arts for services during this year for preschool age class 2 times a week, and at a total of $1,600. Those classes would be at Admiral King on Mondays and Fridays. We also approved a contract with Renaissance Learning for a program we've had in the district. This happens to be for Helen Reiner Stice Accelerated Reader, which is a terrific software subscription literacy program at $3,688. We are paying Lorain County Community College, the Recreation Department, $472.50 for the Boys and Girls Tracks teams to enter into a facility rental agreement for their indoor track facility for practice. We've also entered into a contract with Pearson Incorporated. They will provide scoring services for the writing component of the shared student learning objective that we will be completing this year at a cost of $35,800. Happy to say that we've approved new laptops for elementary students in the 2nd grade through Government Connections Incorporated at $173,880. New laptops, which are replacing outdated iPads that we have in the 2nd grade. We also have approved $494 for our graphic design 1 class, a 1-year subscription to a particular program to support their work there. We've also approved a contract between our school system and Child Career Resource Center for Ohio-approved training for our pre-K staff at $460. That concludes my report.
Thank you very much. Any committee reports? Seeing none, we have our second hearing of the public. None? Good. So our next board meeting will be? I'm sorry, yes ma'am, I apologize.
I have a concern, of course, this is Black History Month. I was wondering if you guys send the necessary information out to the different buildings. It's supposed to be a mandate. You send out, I'm telling this year, sir, to each building, asking them what are they doing for Black History Month. And they're supposed to respond back to you and let you know what they're doing. And the buildings, I don't see what they got. Black History Month. I'm sorry, E.G. Rice. 1034, you're not able to log on 21st Street.
Is there anyone else from the public? Hearing none, seeing none. The next board meeting is scheduled for 24th of February. Back at the High School Media Center. Anything further from the board? Motion to dismiss?
Motion to dismiss?
Support?
Roll call?
Ms. Nazario?
Yes.
Mr. Williams?
Yes.
Mr. Ballard?
Yes.
Ms. Johnson?
Yes.
Mr. Sturgill?
Yes. Meeting is adjourned. Thank you.
This has been a production of Lorain City Schools TV 20 WLCS.